All right, so we're diving into Brave New World today. You guys sent in some really interesting excerpts, and we're pretty excited to dig into this one. I mean, this book, it's like almost a century old, but it still feels so relevant, you know?
It really does. It's kind of amazing how Huxley was able to, like, capture these anxieties about society and technology that we're still grappling with today.
Yeah, totally. And I think one of the things that makes it so creepy, so unsettling, is how he starts off with this, like, seemingly perfect world, this utopia. But then, as you read on, you start to see the cracks, the dark side of it all.
Exactly. You get lured in by this promise of stability and happiness, right? But then you start to realize, like, wait a minute, something's not quite right here. What's the cost of all this supposed bliss?
Yeah, and that motto, community, identity, stability, it sounds so appealing at first, but then it's like, I don't know, there's this undercurrent of something sinister almost. What do you think?
Well, I think the motto itself kind of points to one of the big, like, central tensions in the book.
Mhm.
The needs of the group versus, like, individual freedom. In this world state, stability and happiness are only achieved by basically completely getting rid of individual desires.
Mhm.
Like, they even go so far as to manipulate people's, like, biology to fit into this mold.
It's kind of wild, right? It's like they've engineered away any possibility of like conflict or unhappiness, which on the surface, I guess, sounds great, but
Yeah, there's always a but, right?
yeah.
And that's where this whole caste system comes in. Huxley creates this hierarchy, this pecking order, starting with the alphas at the top and going all the way down to the epsilons at the bottom. And each caste is, like, biologically and psychologically conditioned for their specific role in society. There's no moving up or down the ladder. You're kind of stuck where you're born.
Yeah, it's like a factory producing human beings, right? And the way he describes the Bokanovsky process, like cloning dozens of identical twins from a single egg, it's I don't know, it's chilling. It makes you think about like how far we'd be willing to go like as a society in the pursuit of efficiency and control.
It's definitely a question that, like, hits home even harder today, I think, with all the
Huh.
advancements in, genetic engineering and reproductive
Yeah.
technology and stuff. It's like Huxley is forcing us to really think about the ethics of all this. Like, what does it even mean to be human when we can just manipulate, the very building blocks of life?
And it's not just biology, right? It's their minds too. They use Hypnopaedia, the sleep teaching thing, to basically just drill these specific beliefs and values into each caste. It's almost like programming, like they're turning people into, I don't know, robots almost. Does that remind you of anything in our world today?
Oh, totally. Like, think about how much information and advertising we're bombarded with every single day. I
Hmm.
mean, we might not have Hypnopedia, but we're still massively influenced by the messages,
Hmm.
we're constantly exposed to. Like, think about social media algorithms, right? They can create these echo chambers where you only see stuff that reinforces what you already believe, and you never really get exposed to different perspectives.
It's true. It's like we're being nudged and manipulated in all these subtle ways all the time. And in Brave New World, they take it even further. Like they even condition babies to be like afraid of nature, to be afraid of books. It's like they're intentionally trying to dumb down entire segments of the population just to keep things running smoothly.
Yeah, because the world state knows that, like, knowledge and beauty, they can lead to people questioning things.
Hmm.
They can lead to critical thinking. And that's a huge threat to stability, right?
Hmm.
So they just kind of nip it in the bud, eliminate those things from the get-go, and
Yeah.
that way they can guarantee that each caste will be content with their, predetermined place.
But then you've got characters like Bernard Marx, right? He's an alpha plus, like top of the food chain, but he still doesn't fit in. He feels this like emptiness, this longing for something more than just this shallow happiness that everyone else seems to be experiencing. It's like he knows something's missing.
It's interesting, right? Because Bernard's alienation, his feeling of being an outsider, is partly because he's, like, physically different. He's smaller than the average alpha, which makes him feel kind of inadequate. But there's also this, like, deeper dissatisfaction. It's like he instinctively senses that there's this whole range of human experiences that they've just, like, sacrificed for the sake of this artificial stability.
And then there's Lenina, right? Lenina
Mhm.
Crowne. She's like the embodiment of everything the world state values. She's beautiful, she's popular, she totally conforms. Do you think Bernard is drawn to her because he's trying to like fit in, or is there something more to their connection?
I think it's probably a bit of both, to be honest. I mean, he's definitely attracted to her physically, right?
Yeah.
But I also think he sees her as, like, a symbol of everything he's rebelling against. It's like a part of him wants to like wake her up, show her that there's more to life than just, casual sex and soma. Like maybe he thinks he can break through that conditioning.
And then they go on this trip, right, to the savage reservation. Talk about a culture clash.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's like Huxley is putting these two worlds right next to each other. You've
Yeah.
got the world state, all sterile and controlled, and then you've got the reservation, which is just like raw and chaotic and passionate. And it's through John, the savage, that we really see this clash play out.
Yeah, John. His whole upbringing is like nothing these world state people have ever even imagined. He has
Hmm.
a family, he's got religion, he's experienced real loss and pain. What do you think is the most, I don't know, the most shocking thing about the world state from his perspective?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think it's got to be how casually they approach everything, like
Mm.
relationships, intimacy, even death. There's no real depth, no real feeling. And John, he grew up on Shakespeare, on these big dramatic stories about love and tragedy. So seeing this world where everything is just so surface level, it just horrifies him.
And his mom, Linda, she's kind of caught between these two worlds,
Yeah.
right? Conditioned in the world state, but then forced to adapt to life on the reservation.
Yeah. Linda's story is just sad. She's like, what happens when you fall through the cracks of this supposedly perfect system? She doesn't really belong anywhere. And her dependence on Soma, it's like she's constantly trying to numb herself to escape the pain of her reality.
It's almost like a warning, right? Like, be careful about relying too much on things outside yourself for happiness, whether it's drugs or technology or whatever, anything that promises instant gratification.
Right, exactly. Huxley's asking us, like, are we giving up real experiences, real human connection just for comfort and convenience?
Mm.
And what happens when those things get taken away? What are we left with then?
So John comes back to the world state, and he's just disgusted by everything. He tries to rebel, to wake people up to what he sees, which is this dehumanizing system. But it's like he's speaking a different language. Nobody gets it.
His rebellion is so, so tragic because it's hopeless from the start. He's trying to appeal to their humanity, their emotions, but those are the very things that the world state has worked so hard to eliminate. It's like when he's begging them to reject Soma, they literally can't even process what he's saying.
That scene where he tries to stop the soma distribution, like yelling that it's poison, that's just heartbreaking. And the deltas, they just swarm him, desperate for their fix. It's like they don't even register him as a human being.
I know, it's powerful, right?
Yeah.
It really shows you just how deeply ingrained the conditioning is. And it makes you wonder, like, what does freedom even mean if you're not aware of what's controlling you?
And John's attempts at self-punishment, like whipping himself, it's like he's trying to, I don't know, reclaim some sense of control, like to feel something real in this world where they're so obsessed with avoiding pain.
Exactly. He's choosing pain, choosing to confront his mortality, because to him, that's more authentic than this manufactured happiness they're all chasing. It's a total contrast to the world state's whole philosophy.
But of course, the world state, they just turn his suffering into entertainment. They film him, broadcast his agony for everyone to see. It's like they're saying, see, even your pain is meaningless to us. It's just another show.
And that's the real tragedy of his story. He wants meaning, he wants connection, but the world state is so messed up that even rebellion is just another commodity, something to be consumed.
So his rebellion fails, and in the end, he takes his own life. It's so sad, but it also feels kind of inevitable. Like, where else could he go from there?
It does feel inevitable, right? Like his
Yeah.
suicide is basically saying that his values, his beliefs just can't exist in this reality. He chooses death over conformity. It makes you think about, like, what are we willing to sacrifice for what we believe in? What lines wouldn't we cross?
And it's not just John who gets punished for thinking differently, right? Bernard and Helmholtz, they get in trouble too for not towing the line.
Yeah, they do. Mustafa Mond, the world controller, he decides to exile them to islands where they can hang out with other people who are like, nonconformist. It's kind of messed up, like a backhanded reward.
It is. They're given freedom of thought, but only by being removed from the very society they're trying to change. It's like, is real freedom only possible outside the system?
It's a deep question, man. I think it's more relevant than ever today. Like, how do we hold on to our individuality, our critical thinking skills in this world where we're constantly being bombarded with information and technology?
It's like we're surrounded by it, right? Technology, information, all these forces trying to shape our thoughts and behaviors. How do we stay awake, stay aware when everything's trying to lull us to sleep?
$1 million question, right? And I don't think Brave New World gives us the answers.
Yeah.
But it definitely makes us ask the right questions. It makes us think about our relationship with technology, with happiness, with the choices we're making. both individually and as a society.
I don't know, it just feels like with this book, Huxley is like giving us this warning, right? About a world where we're so focused on comfort and convenience that we kind of forget like what it even means to be human.
Yeah, I get that. And I don't think he's saying that those things like comfort and all that are inherently bad. It's more about like what happens when we prioritize them over everything else?
Hmm.
Like what are the trade-offs? What happens when we lose the ability to like really feel things deeply, to think critically, to connect with each other in a meaningful way?
So instead of always asking like what makes us happy, maybe the better question is like what makes us human? What makes us, who we are?
Totally. And I think Brave New World is saying that it's those messier qualities, empathy, creativity, even the ability to experience like pain and loss.
Mm.
Those are the things that give our lives depth, that give them meaning.
But those things aren't always fun, right? I mean, they can be kind of messy and uncomfortable and I don't know, just tough to deal with sometimes.
Oh, for sure. But like, that saying, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. I think Huxley is kind of getting at that same idea.
Yeah.
We need those challenges, those moments of like adversity to really grow and evolve as people.
Okay, but let's be real. Most of us, we kind of like the comforts of modern life.
Right.
I mean, does that mean we're all destined to just become like these soma-addicted drones, incapable of like deep thought or real emotion?
I don't think so. I mean, Huxley isn't saying that's like an inevitable outcome. It's more like he's exploring the potential consequences.
Okay.
If we go too far down that road, it's a cautionary tale, not like a prophecy. He's asking us to be more aware, more mindful of like how we're using technology, how we're defining happiness, and to think about whether there's a way to find some kind of balance.
So where do we draw the line then? I mean, how do we like enjoy the good stuff, the benefits of technology and progress without losing ourselves in the process? How do we stay, I don't know, like awake in this world that's constantly trying to like sedate us?
That's the big question, right? And I don't think there's an easy answer. Brave New World definitely doesn't give us one, but it does give us a way to think about these things, to examine our own choices, and to figure out what's really important to us. What are we willing to stand up for?
Man, I feel like we could just keep talking about this forever. But we are at the end of our deep dive into Brave New World. Hopefully this has like given you some new perspectives on the book and maybe even like made you think about our own world in a different way.
Absolutely. And that's what's so great about like these classic works of literature, right?
Mm.
They stick with you long after you finish reading them.
Mm.
They make you think, they make you question.
For sure. So what really stood out to you from all this? What parts of it like resonated with you, made you think about your own life? We'd love to hear your thoughts. So jump into the comments. Tell us what you think because this conversation, it's definitely not over.